Welcome, everybody. Bring this meeting to order. It's 10 o'clock for the full authority meeting of December 16th. Board members, staff, guests, and members of the public are reminded the full authority board and committee meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the authority's website along with the official written minutes. As such, comments, opinions that are expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual board members, guests, or the general public are their own and do not represent the opinions and comments of the full authority and Kettle Creek Conservation Board of Directors. Recorded video of the full authority meeting is not considered the official record of that meeting. The official record of the full authority meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by the full authority. Elizabeth, you want to do a roll call at this time?
Mr. Chair, Dennis Kravitz.
Here.
Jagger.
Present.
Harvey. Steve Harvey.
I'm saying yes, because I had trying to get my earphones on. Thank you if you got to me yet.
Jim Herbert is
Yes.
present. Jones.
Yes.
Yes.
Mackey. Bill Mackey. Steve Peters.
Yes.
Elizabeth Pelosa.
Yes.
Allison Warwick.
Yes.
Ralph Winfield.
Yes.
Bill Mackey. Steve Harvey. Mr. Chair, Steve Harvey and Bill Mackey were previously on the line. They might be having some technical difficulties. For now, I'll mark them absent. But I'll keep trying during the other votes.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Next, declarations of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, next is the minutes of the November 24th full authority meeting. Any errors or omissions?
I'll move it, Herbert.
Herbert?
Peters will second.
Peter second. Any further discussion? So the recommendation is the minutes of the 24th, November 24th, 2021 full authority meeting be approved. It's moved to second. So all in favor?
Yes.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield.
Yes.
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Move down to matters arising. Item A is the media report from Betsy. Welcome, Betsy.
Nothing too exciting to report. It was all in your advance package, just some flood messages as well as some other posts about tree planting and bird feeders.
Thanks, Betsy.
Question?
Any questions? Go ahead,
Question
Jim.
for Betsy. Betsy, have you ever seen a year like this for water and flooding? Is this, would you say, a very unusual year for all the flooding going on?
I think I'll let Jen speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Jim, I would say it's just because of all the rain that we've had this fall. It's just been an unusually wet fall, but I wouldn't say that it's an unusual amount of flood events.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to project tracking with Elizabeth.
Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, just a couple of highlights there. The 2020 seasonal applications for camping have gone out. There's a variety of site visits happening. There's snow surveys. Dam safety inspections have occurred. And we're meeting with City of London staff to discuss tree planting opportunities and really winterizing most of our properties. So unless there was any direct questions from members, that would be the project tracking report for this month.
Questions for Elizabeth? Seeing none, we'll move down to watershed conditions with Jennifer. Go ahead, Jen.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. Not too much exciting to report. We did have a couple of windy events, which we managed to avoid any major issues. The water levels in the lake have been slowly dropping, the seasonal drop. And just keeping up to date with messaging for those events.
Thanks, Jen. Any questions for Jen? Seeing none, we'll move down to the next item, which is also Jen again with the WECI project update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we had two WECI projects this year. One was a vegetation removal for the embankments, which has been completed. The second project was relating to concrete repairs on the Dalewood Dam. We had some slowdowns trying to get the project done, just with issues with getting engineers to provide quotes. And it was just a difficult situation. So what we're proposing is to do the pre-engineering aspect of the project as a 2022 capital budget project, moving forward with a quote provided from a local engineer. That would involve the pre-engineering phase 1, so design and drawings of that project, and then applying for a new WECI project in 2022 to do the actual repairs.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. Any questions for Jen on that report? There will be a recommendation coming out of this at the end of the matters arising. Okay, we'll move down to the next report from Jeff and Lawrence and Brandon Lawler regarding invasive species. Go ahead. I think Jeff's probably leading this one.
Very good. Thank you and good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to take the time to introduce Brandon. I don't know if the board has formally met him yet. He was hired in March as the Forest and Lands technician, has been working to help with the tree planting in the spring and then tackling some of invasive species management since then. He actually was hired last fall or late summer, I guess, to help out in a maintenance position and transitioned into this Forest and Lands technician. So please welcome Brandon, and I'm going to let him talk now a little bit about some of the projects that he's been working on since he started. So.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. I'm going to summarize some of the invasive species work that has been done in the last few months here at the Authority. So first of all, some of the impacts of invasive species. So invasive species degrade natural areas designed for public use and impede recreation and educational opportunities. And in some cases, critical infrastructure such as dams and drains can also be negatively impacted by the spread of invasive species, leading to health and safety concerns. Invasive species can also be host for pests and diseases and that can reduce crop yields. So this year we have started managing 4 of our species. We have spotted knapweed and Phragmites on this slide. So spotted knapweed, there's a large infestation of spotted knapweed on either side of the laneway at both the office and Dan Patterson Conservation Area. As our knapweed was growing amongst desirable species, we believe that a herbicide treatment would likely cause off-target mortality. So our treatment method was to repeatedly mow to prevent the seed head from developing. As spotted knapweed is quite difficult to control, and seeds can become viable in the seed bank for up to 10 years. We understand that this process will have to be undertaken for the next several years for control. The next, we have Phragmites. We were able to control Phragmites for 3 private landowners, as well as the Phragmites growing on Authority property. As you can see in kind of the 4 series of photos, it's a multi-step process starting in August and finishing up early to mid-October. In August, we cut the stand down, and then October, as it has regrown, we apply our herbicide. And then on the bottom right photo 4 shows what we expect to see after a couple weeks after our herbicide application. And we also understand that Phragmites control is a multi-year endeavor. Since as applicators, it's very, very difficult to spray every stalk. And since they have such an elaborate root system, there will be regrowth. So we will have to repeat this process as necessary or until complete control has been achieved. Our third species we've worked on this year is common buckthorn or European buckthorn. It's also quite prolific on KCCA lands. So we need a variety of techniques to manage it. This year we were able to experiment with the use of a tractor and a chain just to physically pull the buckthorn out of the ground, root and all. We were able to remove large buckthorn from along the laneway and forest edge at the office. This additional method just gives us the ability to efficiently remove large buckthorn completely from the landscape. And this is just another method that will be used in conjunction with our herbicide. And our fourth species is the LDD moth, formerly known as gypsy moth. This year was particularly a bad summer with high levels of defoliation throughout the province, with Eastern Ontario getting the brunt and particularly hit hard. So staff we were able to remove egg masses from trees and structures at the workshop and around the office. And as you can see in the life cycle here, this process can take place anytime between September and April. So we will continue to do so as we discover these egg masses. And I guess our next steps, we will continue to identify and inventory and map invasive species on KCCA properties, and management will be undertaken as appropriate to reduce the spread of invasive species into new areas and to gradually reduce the size of already infested areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, sorry, and welcome to KCCA. Any questions for Brandon? Seeing
Kravitz.
Oh, go ahead, Dennis.
Oh, Kravitz. Just wondering, Brandon, for the gypsy moths, can they not be sprayed? I noticed in the report that the eggs are scraped off the trees. Is there no spray or anything else that can be done about the gypsy moths? Because they're quite prolific in this area near Port Stanley as well.
If Jeff has anything to add, I'll let him, but as far as I know, there is a biopesticide that is available that it's sprayed at a different time of year. I believe it's in the spring, but if Jeff has anything.
Yeah, there is a herbicide that Brandon mentioned that can be sprayed. Now, timing of it is pretty crucial because it only impacts the LDD moth at certain life stages. And unfortunately, it's not restricted to just LDD moth. If there are other moths that are beneficial or desirable that are in that same life cycle, it could impact and kill those as well. It's something generally only considered when it's a large scale forest as far as spraying, that type of thing. It's something that has to be used with caution for sure.
And if I may add, we had quite a long discussion about this in the county of Middlesex, and it went down to our lower tiers because there was quite a big problem with LDD moth in areas, especially near the Skunks Misery Tract. So we basically said that we would have like a friendly neighbor policy, that if somebody did want to spray near the municipal lands, they didn't have to worry about overspraying. But you know, we weren't going to support it because, again, just like Jeff said, like there is a time frame and there is proof that it does impact other insects and butterflies. So we just said if somebody wanted to spray their own stuff, they could do it and we wouldn't mind. So that's how we handled that.
Thank you, Jeff and Allison and Brandon.
Anything further on that one? If not, we'll move down to item F, report from Elizabeth regarding elections of officers.
Mr. Chair, this is just a reminder to the board that elections of officers will happen at our next board meeting in January. And with the new CA Act regulations and updates to our administrative bylaws, the chair and vice chair can hold office for 1 term and shall serve no more than 2 terms. You may ask the minister to grant an extension. that successors to the position of chair and vice chair shall be a member from a different participating municipality from the incumbent. So just things to take in mind as we work towards those elections in January. And then just another opportunity to remind you about appointments following the elections next year as well, about the 70% rule must be among municipal councillors. Again, that's something that I'll reach out to your member municipalities later next year on, but just a reminder at this point.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Any questions for Elizabeth? It's
Just a
fairly
quick
straightforward.
question, Grant, just a quick
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
What if someone from among the municipal council turned down the nomination? What if they just say no, they aren't available to do that position?
I guess then we pick somebody else.
Yeah, then you would pick someone else, but it would have to be from a different municipality than the current chair.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we have two recommendations. The first recommendation, the staff reports under matters arising A through F be received. Have mover and seconder, please.
Moved by Pelosi.
Harvey,
Harvey seconds. All in favor?
Yes,
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
yes.
Herbert,
yes,
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosi,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Jones, and that motion
Yeah.
passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And the second recommendation that staff proceed with phase one of the Dalewood Dam concrete repairs project. Have a mover and seconder, please.
I'll
Kravitz?
Winfield and Kravitz. Call the vote, please.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
yes,
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosi,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes,
Motion passes, Mr. Chair.
thank you. And next item is correspondence. Do not believe we have any correspondence or statements of revenue and expense this time. So under new business, first is a year-end reserve report.
Mr. Chair, every year we do need a motion for staff to undertake the necessary transfers to and from reserves at year end. The budgeted drawdown from reserves is $239,000. A very large drawdown was budgeted this year, mainly because of the unpredictability of the campground performance. I'm pleased to say, because of the campground's performance this year and their ability to get people into the campground enjoying that service, I don't expect as large a drawdown being necessary from the reserves. So I'll only pull from reserves to the extent that's required to balance. And as you remember, we've already agreed to set aside $20,000 for a salary review in 2022. And then there has been some funds realized from the forest management at Lake Whitaker that will be placed in the Conservation Lands Reserve this year as well. So the recommendation is simply to do the transfers to and from reserves conducted as outlined in the 2021 approved budget and 2021 year-end reserve report.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions? So the recommendation that the transfers to and from reserves be conducted as outlined in the 2021 approved budget and the 2021 year-end reserve report. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
Herbert
Warwick to
moves.
move.
Warwick, and I think a Herbert was in there. We'll go with Warwick and Herbert.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jagger,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
yes,
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosi,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
and Jones.
Yes,
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Our next report's categorization of programs and services.
Mr. Chair, so this is a continuation of our progress in terms of meeting the updated regulations for the Conservation Authorities Act regulations. As you recall, last month you approved the transition plan, which basically set out the timeline and the methods in terms of us working through both developing an inventory of programs and services and transitioning to the new budget processes by January of 2024. The next stage in that plan is to develop an inventory of programs and services. And as an initial step, what staff have done is to undertake a characterization or categorization of our programs and services. So it's not the full inventory of programs and services that we presented in your advance package. To be the full inventory, we will need to add the budget, so the five-year numbers of what it costs to run those programs and services, but we thought it was important to start looking at our programs and services and categorize those into those 1, 2, or 3. So if I can have the next slide, please. So just to recall, category 1 is those mandatory programs and services that require municipal levy without an agreement. Similar to basically how we levy currently. Category 2 is non-mandatory programs and services requested by a municipality, and these need some type of an agreement or apportioning agreement with that municipality and the CA. And then category 3 are programs and services which the CA board feels are required to fulfill the role of the Conservation Authority in the watershed. These programs and services might continue self-generated and therefore would not require an agreement with the municipality. If they require levy, then an apportionment agreement has to be set up. So what staff have done is looked at each one of our programs and services, compared it against the regulation and the definitions of category 1, 2, and 3. And you can see by this summary chart of where each one of our program buckets we've categorized. So I think category 1 shouldn't be a surprise in terms of what we're looking at there. It's our planning and regulations department, our flood forecasting and warning, our dam operations, natural hazards and technical studies, our Conservation Authority owned lands in terms of our source water protection is mandatory. Those provincial water quality monitoring and monitoring programs are mandatory as well. And then the administration aspects of the authority. I think the only one to highlight there, and we'll have to have discussions as we move forward, is low water response. As you recall, that's now a mandatory program of the province. Before 2019, the province funded the authority to do that. The funding was withdrawn in 2019, and at the time, the authority decided to stop that program until funding was reinstated. So we'll have to have more discussions in the new year of how we want to deal with that specific program, as well as some of the other mandatory programs will require further discussion just in terms of the extent to which the board wants to enact those ones. And for instance, the inventory of Conservation Authority owned lands in the core watershed-based resource management strategy. There's not too much that the province has outlined in terms of what those strategies we will detail. They've left it very much up to the individual CAs. And I think that's a way so that we can build those elements up to our means. And so we'll have discussions about that moving forwards to hopefully have the least impact to the municipal levy in terms of meeting that deliverable and meeting the needs of our local watersheds. Category 2 are the programs and services that a municipality has requested the CA to undertake and requires an MOU. I'm pleased that all of the programs and services that we currently undertake that I would group in this category already have agreements in place. So, the municipality of Central Elgin and St. Thomas approached the CA for the undertaking of the Kettle Creek Dog Park. We already have an existing agreement in place there that covers off the maintenance and costs associated with that. Similarly, for the maintenance and management of the Belmont and Union conservation areas, and then the Elgin County Woodlands Conservation Bylaw. Category 3 are really those programs and services that we believe would be grouped in this category, and we would be approaching our member municipalities moving forward to establish an agreement and apportioning agreement for the continuation of these programs. The programs that aren't going to require agreement, because we don't currently ask for municipal levy to undertake them and wouldn't plan on doing it in the future, are our campgrounds. Our land acquisition is by donation. Stewardship and education programs are already being completely funded by self-generated revenue, so they won't require an agreement moving forward. Our watershed monitoring program, and I'm just talking about the portion that we go above and beyond over the provincial water quality monitoring program. So in correlation with source water protection and our watershed report card, we set up some additional monitoring stations. Those would fall outside of necessarily the core mandated programs and services, as well as our tree planting. As you recall, the province has stated that tree planting on our own lands is mandatory. Tree planting for individual landowners is not mandatory. I think the argument can be made that both the watershed monitoring portion and the tree planting, while they might not be mandatory, they support our mandatory programs and services and help to control the costs in those program streams as well. And so I really think that those two programs are needed moving forward. We're not talking about increasing municipal levy so much as just categorizing the municipal levy into the required buckets as the province has asked us to do. So the next steps in this process is I wanted to kind of get the board's blessing in terms of the different categorizations of our programs and services. The next step, what I would like to do, and I've set up a meeting with the CAOs and senior staff of your member municipalities to go out and speak with them in early January and just brief them on the updated regulations, as well as the requirements for this inventory of programs and services, and our initial thoughts on the different buckets and how we move forward, and get some initial feedback from them. We'll bring that back to the January meeting with the ultimate goal to look at having the budget components put in and you reviewing it and at the February 9th meeting, all with the goal to have it submitted to the province by the end of February.
Okay, any questions or concerns?
One question, Mr. Chair, if I may, it's Dominique.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to Elizabeth. Can you remind me for the category 3, the ones that don't need agreement, because I think it says it's fully funded without the levy. Does that mean that you also calculate the cost of overhead? So there's a portion of, office and management oversight that goes into the cost of operating those services and programs. Can you remind me if that's the way you calculate it? So there is a portion of those costs included in that?
And so if you look at the budget, there's line items within our budget called vehicle transfers. In each budget department, there's a program support transfer line as well. So those would be the chargebacks to the administration department for that type of overhead. I think there's still discussions going on just on how we lay that out moving forward. And I think a key component of that will be waiting to see. We still don't have an updated levy regulation from the province. They've said that that's coming out by the end of this year. I'm not sure that we're going to see it. It might come out next week, but I think that's the last piece of puzzle that we need to really look at in terms of making those final decisions on that administrative overhead and which bucket that goes in and how it's spread out. But I am confident that the programs and services that you see in category 3, we're already charging those departments for overhead.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing no further questions, the recommendation is that the draft categorization of programs and services be approved for circulation and discussed with member municipalities. Have a mover and seconder, please.
Mackey.
Seconder, please.
Harvey.
Herbert.
Harvey. And call the vote, please, Elizabeth.
Krebitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes,
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
thank you. So next item is the draft budget and proposed capital purchases.
Mr. Chair, so through previous discussions, the budget has been drafted with a 3% general levy increase, a 2.5% cost of living increase. We've projected the campgrounds operating at 100%. We've accounted for insurance increases of upwards of 15%. A drawdown of reserves of $152,425, and we put a placeholder in of $30,000 from reserves to undertake a study at Lake Whitaker to inform future planning in that area and hopefully generate possibly additional revenue. This latest version of the draft budget that you see, we've added in our capital purchases based on our 5-year capital forecast. If I can have the next slide. Just to review those purchases, we've earmarked $50,000 for a flood forecasting model. This would update our model, make it more automated and increase functions of it. We are seeking funding for this model upgrade as well. So with that funding support, obviously the impact to the budget would be less. The next one we've already discussed this morning, and that's the Dewa Dam repairs. Again, just to remind you, the budgeted cost is $128,000, but we do apply for WECI funding, which would bring that down to about 50% if we're successful in all our applications for that one as well. The next spend would be at Lake Whitaker Conservation Area. Again, this would be the demolition of the rental house that's currently on the property and has reached end of life, as well as increasing safety components out there in terms of gates and barriers to prevent access. The washroom upgrades are upgrades to our washrooms in the campgrounds, and it's applying an epoxy flooring to increase the life expectancy of those washrooms. And the next one is a utility trailer for use in the significant areas. This will increase the efficiency of staff and the ability to transport 2 lawnmowers to sites for more effective grass cutting and maintenance. And the next one is our standing amounts per year for our pooled assets. This includes road improvements, signage improvements, and our technology pool of $8,000.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, we have a recommendation that the proposed capital purchase be incorporated into the 2022 budget. Mover and seconder, please.
Warwick?
Also move.
Got Ralph and Allison.
Mhm.
Call the vote, please.
Krebitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
and Jones.
Yes,
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And our final report is Joe with his December planning regulations. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like usual, the advanced package outlines all of the plan review comments, supporting comments, and Section 28 permits issued since our last meeting. I would also highlight that in the December report, we do provide our annual reporting to satisfy the client service standards for Conservation Authority plan and permit review by Conservation Ontario and MNR. In that, we're reporting that as of December 9th of this year, 44 permits have been issued, 40 site clearances for a total of 84 written permissions under the Section 28 regulations. And all of them were issued within or exceeding the timelines that were outlined by the province for issuing Section 28 permits. So we're just looking for the board to receive that information or that report.
Thanks, Joe. Any questions for Joe? Congratulations on meeting your deadlines. So recommendation is that the December 2021 planning and regulations activity report be received. Mover and seconder, please.
Rabbits?
Seconder. Herbert. Call the vote, please.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
yes,
Warwick,
yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes,
And that motion passes, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Before we go into close, I'd like to recognize our next meeting, which already was mentioned earlier in the meeting, is January 19th, where elections will be held. And I guess I need a mover to go into closed session.
Will we be zooming? Is that what hybrid
Peters?
means?
Sorry, Jim, what was that again?
We'll still be on Zoom or we'll be on site?
I would suggest we'll probably be on Zoom, considering what's
Okay,
going to
thank you.
probably be announced in the next couple of days.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, we have Peters moved to go into closed. Seconder, please.
Harvey?
Here.
Harvey, call the vote, please.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Jiguer, Jiguer,
Yes.
sorry, Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
yes.
Warwick,
yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
That motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Elizabeth.